with
cushion,
him?
but
That was
No,
9 or 10,
Oh.
right?
You hear what, see what they're
2009
doing to
or
I think
Willie?
it was 2009, yeah.
Yeah, I
Willie
remember.
Reynolds, the
It was
mayor
nasty.
in
Oh, I
Bethlehem.
know, it was like 100 days. He was the
Well,
first one that won 100, till it was over
He
100.
used to be at the city of
Yeah, we
Bethlehem.
didn't get
That's
paid.
all the drugs.
So then the
Oh, yeah,
unions,
they're
both
killing
the
Willie
troopers
because
and
they
ours,
fired
sued
somebody
in federal
who had
court.
had
Now
money
they
for
have to pay
years
us.
and was really, really
Yeah, 'cause
confident.
they have
This
to go
was
to
his
work.
buddy and brought him in.
Well, yeah, that's,
So
that's the
Callie
thing, I
and the
couldn't go
rest
work
of them are
somewhere
just
else, I
killing
had
him
to
on
still
social
keep
media.
going.
Right,
And
you
at the
couldn't-
meetings,
yeah.
they're
It was
just
like the
destroying
TSA.
it about the fact
Those
that
poor
this guy,
bastards.
they said he was dealing you right out of the freaking,
At least
out of
they're
City Hall.
getting
Oh,
paid now,
jeez.
as far as I know.
I
You mean
believe they are.
Everybody's
I
here
know
that's
he was,
coming,
that was
right?
my, that's what I was
No,
telling him.
Georgie.
Oh, Georgia, we need to, okay, sorry.
But Willie's getting clobbered, and they're like, you fired the guy who was here previous, who was so good, for this knucklehead, he's dealing drugs out of. It's because it was his friend.
Well, and that's what they're crucifying him about, probably.
There's gonna be more coming out.
Oh,
So,
he's
so put it
risen.
this way,
Good to get stay out of that stuff.
he has 123 counts right now.
No.
Felonies. Felonies.
Yeah, well, there was Jelly.
And I could tell you this part.
Yeah, Jelly still in the
So, he only the first time he got arrested for the pound. He put a statement out at the commissioner's meeting. I never did, never will, never thought of, sold, used, or anything, drugs. So the 101 counts are all drug deals, coke deals that he was doing in his own words, just put them all out to the world.
Oh my God. Unbelievable.
So if he goes to trial, guess how it gets closed?
Oh, he ain't
His
going-
statement.
He ain't going to trial.
No, he has Gary.
Hello?
He has Gary. Gary's being a.
Gary loves that shit.
Gary who?
He loves that shit.
Oh, Gary's representing him? So here, I'll tell you something. Gary's getting big bucks, man.
And high
Call the
profile.
meeting in order, if you could rise for the pledge. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. High Profile.
He's probably getting $50,000 fee for that.
Oh, jeez.
Roll call.
Mr. Collins?
Here.
Mr. Cruz?
Here.
Ms. Hunsinger?
Here.
Mr. Schwartz?
Present. We didn't do the executive session. Correct. So it's on the agenda, but it did not occur.
Brendan's here, I've seen him.
Any public comment for agenda items only? See, the podium's empty. No one was asked. Approval of the minutes from March 12th.
I'm not gonna approve one minute.
I'll second.
Got a motion by Georgianne, second by Lou. Comments, questions? Roll call.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Cruz?
Yes.
Ms. Hunsinger?
Yes.
Mr. Schwartz?
Yes. Minutes approved. There's checks to be approved, recommendation to ratify check fund, checks number 4616 to 7682, totaling $177,398.90.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any questions on that one? Roll call.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Cruz?
Yes.
Ms. Hunsinger?
Yes.
Mr. Schwartz?
Yes. We have account checks number 13 through 17, totaling $18,834 and a penny.
So move.
Motion, we have a second. Questions? Roll call.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Cruz?
Yes.
Ms. Hunsinger?
Yes.
Mr. Schwartz?
Yes. We have recommendation to ratify fire fund checks 47 through 51, totaling $4,514.09.
Did we? So moved.
Got a motion?
Second.
Got a second?
Moving right along there, huh?
Roll call?
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Cruz?
Yes.
Ms. Hunsinger?
Yes.
Mr. Schwartz?
Yes. And then the C is repeating from what it was above, correct?
I got down as Lou and Chris.
Okay.
Because it's the same number, 18,834.01.
No, I meant this one.
This should be.
Yeah, that one's
Yeah, it
down
should be
as
the
Chris.
general fund,
Yeah.
fire fund, and then there should be.
The escrow's just
escrow.
listed twice.
Yep.
Yeah.
You got it.
We'll ignore that on the agenda because that was duplicate. Alright. Supervisors business.
So, under your agenda, you have, first item, and this is for Jim Malott. Previously, we had talked prior to winter of 2025, 2026, we were having some parking issues in the village of Jacksonville along Willow Street, Birch, Elm, and potentially Jacksonville Road itself, as well as the two alleys. And we were looking at doing a study to see where parking would be best to supplement our plowing operations, but also make sure that there's emergency access for fire trucks and ambulances. And also we were getting complaints from people not being able to get mail, as well as deliveries to certain homes for like heating oil and gasoline, propane. We were having those complaints with the residents. So Jim did a study. He can present what his study is for you guys, but we're going to recommend that you guys make a motion to authorize the staff to adopt an ordinance to enact parking restrictions in various roads, which are listed.
I'm not sure exactly how you want me to go through this. Hopefully you had a chance to review the plan set that was in the folders. I did not bring multiple sets, but I could certainly go over it with you. Brent, is there any way to put that plan up on the wallboard?
We can. We're pulling it up.
I did look at this, so we,
I pulled it up on my computer here for the map now.
So if you can zoom out to just get an overall picture of that sheet, and then we're going to jump to the second sheet after that. So basically what we looked at is the village of Jacksonville. And on this first sheet, you'll notice that we superimposed, and the one thing I did want to mention is this was not surveyed. This is based upon aerial imagery, site-specific measurements that we took out in the field and things like that. But we did not do a boundary survey of any sort or anything of that nature. These are approximated from GIS county parcel lines and the aerials and things. Specifically, we superimposed various requirements for the township for site triangles for roadways, site triangles for driveways. This sheet shows you basically the general features and the limitations to what would be available for parking just based upon our current ordinance for intersections and driveways. Then on the lower right of that plan, you'll see that I listed some of the vehicle code setbacks that are required for parking. Legislatively, a vehicle is not to be parked within an intersection, is not to be blocking a driveway. It shall be 15 feet from fire hydrants, 20 feet from crosswalks, not cross walls, and 30 feet from stop signs.
I like cross walls.
So,
That sounds more fun.
so I looked at this, and when you start piecing all the pieces of the puzzle together, there's very limited area to park on some of the streets regardless. Even if we ignored everything else as to the limited width and limited maneuverability. Can you jump to sheet 2, please? So on sheet 2, what we did is we investigated, based upon the roadway geometry and horizontal alignment, lane widths and things like that, we superimposed a single unit delivery vehicle of about 30 feet. An SU-30 is what it's referred to as. And we did that basically to show and provide a demonstration of how constricted a single delivery vehicle that you might get an Amazon package or anything else would be to navigate through the village of Jacksonville. On top of that, I spoke to and discussed with Public Works and Josh at the fire company the ability to get our emergency vehicles, our snow plows, and things like that through. As you can see on this, at any of the intersections, at any of the turning movements, there is absolutely no place for a vehicle to park that would not create a congestion problem and a lack of maneuverability for these vehicles, let alone emergency vehicles and things of that nature. I also was aware that we were having problems in the village with mail delivery, and sometimes it was being disregarded because of complaints by the post office that they couldn't get to the mailboxes, which were along the southerly side of Willow Street, because people were parked along them.
that's because they wouldn't allow a walking feet there.
Well, I didn't question why. I just that was passed along to me. So I did speak to representatives at the post office, and they reported that they typically have deliveries between 3 and 3:30 p.m. Now, I am aware that there's some variability to that, but, so based on everything that we looked at, discussions with staff, discussions with Public Works, discussions with our fire company, generally speaking, now this, I don't know if you can pull the memo up. We all felt that there was absolutely a need to restrict parking. What's going to be problematic for the board is that it's not going to be a very popular decision, and it's already problematic, but this is basically what we have found. I wrote the memo to indicate what we thought were absolutes. Then I provided options that the board may want to consider, but are less critical. So just going along in the order of the memo, you'll see that we recommend that Oak Street, the alley that runs across the middle of the village there, that just be officially restricted from parking. I'm not aware of it having any problems, but it absolutely does not have adequate width. It's only between 10 and 11, maybe 12 feet at its widest through that whole area. There's absolutely no place along Oak Street that you could have on-street parking. So our recommendation would be to restrict on-street parking on Oak Street in the entirety. Same thing with St. John Street, the one that is basically like a fish hook that goes from Arrowhead Road up to Willow Street. We recommend the same thing. That one's a little bit wider. It ranges from probably a low of somewhere around 12 to as wide as maybe 14 feet, but obviously still not wide enough to permit any on-street parking and have a vehicle pass by. Jacksonville Road, due to the nature of that, although it is wider, it's still not sufficiently wide enough to have safe vehicular passage in both directions and allow on-street parking. So we would recommend that Jacksonville Road in its entirety. In this area, we listed its entirety from the Norbath Trail to Arrowhead Road. So that way, we have a specific delineation of the area that was studied and the recommendation that goes with it. Now we jump down to Willow Street. Willow Street is the primary main roadway on the lower portion of Jacksonville. What we feel is an absolute requirement for safe passage of vehicles and to eliminate some of the problems was generally agreed upon by staff, Public Works, and our fire company that at a minimum, Willow Street should be restricted from parking on the northerly side. One of the reasons we felt that the northerly side was the proper one to do is it has several constraints due to driveways and housing and the intersections and things like that. The northerly side of Willow Street doesn't present as much opportunity to park anyway. So the primary, what we feel is an absolute would be to restrict Willow Street parking on the northerly side. That would allow on-street parking along the southerly side, but it's realistic, and that's where the most available parking would be. What that does, though, is it could potentially restrict mail delivery to the mailboxes. So as an option, if you want to, you could restrict it on the southerly side as well as the northerly side. But if we do that, I would recommend only doing that as a time of day restriction from 10 to 4. So basically while people are away at work, during the day when mail deliveries come, when the majority of your home deliveries would come, the roadway would be more open and there wouldn't be any problems. So I present that to you as an optional, not an absolute. Birch Street, there's really not a lot of area available when you start looking at the constraints of site triangles and things like that. So we felt that Birch Street should absolutely be restricted along the easterly side, because once you put together all the site triangle restrictions, there's really no place that you can park on the east side of Birch Street. The option there would be to restrict it on the westerly side as well, but we really didn't feel that that was an absolute, so that's an optional. The roadway width does not support on-street parking, and that's why we present the option to you to restrict both sides if you feel appropriate. Basically the same thing along Elm Street. Elm Street, we feel that the westerly side, which again is constrained by site triangle limitations, driveways and other things, the westerly side of Elm Street should absolutely be restricted. The easterly side, again, same as Burke Street, doesn't have suitable width in its entirety along it. There are a couple sections where there's sufficient width, but for the same reasons that I mentioned on Burke Street, we could also recommend as an option that the easterly side also be restricted, because there's really no need to have parking along there, and the majority of it has insufficient width. Then the last one is Arrowhead Road. Arrowhead Road, I don't know that anybody really was thinking of Arrowhead Road at the time, but Arrowhead Road also does not have sufficient width to support on-street parking and safe two-way traffic. We recommend that Arrowhead Road from Jacksonville to St. John Street be restricted specifically. However, as an option, you could do Arrowhead Road in its entirety from Jacksonville Road to Locust Road, because the same prevailing roadway conditions are throughout that entire length of roadway. So these are the absolutes I presented to you, with the alternate options that I would recommend to be either additional or if the board feels that they don't need to be that restrictive, could be left alone. But the ones that are listed as the primary restrictions, we recommend that the board enact that. And realizing that you might want to give it some thought, maybe take a ride out there and look at it or whatever. I don't necessarily look to you to make a decision this evening, but I wanted to get the results in front of you so you could discuss it, and again, possibly take a look at it in the field.
My question is, though, we have elderly people in that development, in that area. We're basically taking all their parking away.
Well, all their on-street parking. Everybody has driveways, everybody
Not
has
everybody.
Not everybody.
garages.
Some of those homes
Not
have
everybody.
no other
Yeah.
parking.
No, not of them don't have that. And
I get the whole thing for the emergency vehicles but we still gotta remember, we have residents there that, I know the big issue, not only parking they complain
That way
about,
we
but
did
they
this.
complain about the mail. And that's not our issue, but it is our issue. I just don't see us, basically they'd have nowhere to park. We'd have to provide some kind of parking for them. I have no problem with Arrowhead, because I don't believe people park on Arrowhead now. No one parks there.
Nobody, I don't know.
I've never seen a car that I went through there.
Look at them, the parking in the
I
parking lot.
understand what this is, but man, we're taking everything away
Well,
from
and
them.
So
that's why the Willow
they would
Street
still
southerly
have-
side was listed as an optional.
Correct, it's not, we're not recommending it, but if you wanted to do a daytime restriction for the parking, it would meet the warrants. Most of these homes, in looking at them, do have driveways and off-street parking. They just do not use them because it's more convenient to walk out the front.
Well, people have multi-cars now too. They have
Well,
two, three
that's-
cars too in a property. And nobody
But what
wants to
we're
walk a
seeing-
mile to get to their house. I
but-
mean, I lived in Allentown my whole life. That was the worst thing, trying to find a parking spot because they had so many places that you couldn't park.
But the
You know
issue
what I
we're
mean?
seeing is, if we continue today, we might as well not even worry about parking, because we won't be able to plow the street. We literally cannot get through to plow that road with the cars parked.
Because all the cars parked there.
Correct.
But don't you have that thing up that when it snows, they have to move their cars?
If they move them,
Nobody follows.
but that's the other issue. And then, so my recommendation is you at least restrict one side where people aren't parking anyway now, other than occasionally we're getting complaints about people on that side that makes it difficult to transverse. You would still allow the southerly side where the mailboxes are. If they want to relocate their mailboxes to the other side, that would enable them to have better delivery service with the no parking. But it's not a complete restriction in the village.
I know when I was campaigning there, they said a lot of people that work bring their work vehicles home and they park and they take a lot of spots down there.
I mean,
And
I
then
think
I'm thinking, can you restrict
the
work
neighborhood has gone
vehicles?
through a dramatic transformation the last couple of years. I mean, we don't see a lot of the older residents that have historically lived there. We're not seeing a lot of commercial vehicles. We're seeing single family, sedans, trucks, SUVs parking, but now they're parking on both sides. Now, there is one household that he has trailers that he parks, which he could park down the street further. But that's where we're looking at, I mean, not doing anything right now, we're not gonna be able to plow in the winter, and we're gonna have a mess, cause they're gonna be calling,
And they
complaining.
can't park in the parking lot at the park anymore?
We offer that to them, sometimes they move, sometimes they don't. So this is basically a combination of both, to get the people that are living there and will move to the area to know, hey, the parking is limited. But all of the homes on Willow Street on both sides have access to the rear of the home to, if they don't have a driveway, to put a driveway, or they have a garage or parking. Plus, they would have a space and a half in front of the homes, with the width of the homes. But they would still have the southern side unless we wanted to do the optional daytime restriction.
You don't have the snow emergency route?
Well, the whole township is snow emergency route, but
Right.
that,
Is there any signs down there?
we have no signs in the township for our snow emergency routes. We just declare it and ask them to move their car, and we can go out and ticket them, but by the time we ticket them, the snow emergency's over.
And you can't tow them, right?
We could, but I don't know if we wanna incur the cost of towing and dealing with some of those issues that happen.
Well, we wouldn't
With
incur the
towing.
cost, they would have to pay to get their car
Yeah,
out.
they would have to pay to get it
Yeah.
back.
Well, but the fine and everything else.
I personally think I need to look at this a little before I make a, because this is taking a lot of parking away down there, and maybe I'm not visualizing it right.
Well, I remember running ambulance calls down there, and I think there's at least one or two handicap restricted spots on Willow Street too.
There are no more handicap
those
on
aren't
that road anymore. Those
Okay.
have been removed.
Because one of the houses we went to all the time that had a handicap on there.
Did they
The
move?
owners are deceased.
Basically, we just parked the ambulance in the middle of the road because there is no room to get anywhere, and we just tied it up while we were there. But
Well,
I mean, if you have a fire scene there, you're lucky if you get one engine down on that road.
What's really problematic as well,
Yeah.
in that the turning templates show it.
Yeah.
All you need is one or two cars parked in precisely the wrong place,
Yep.
and it shuts down an entire intersection.
You can't come in off of Birch Street with a fire truck or Elm Street, you're more than
Well,
likely only gonna
what I
have to
will
get
say,
around it.
This
Birch,
whole village, so-
in my, just driving through, I don't see as much on Birch parking. On Elm Street, we do see parking, but it's basically long-term parking.
Well, the problem
They've
I
parked
had
their
was
vehicles
you
in
come in Birch, and then they're parked on Willow, and you can't make the turn with the truck. It's not Birch Street
I know.
in general, it's the intersection where that T ends. You can't make a swing, even the bumper hangs out too far on the fire truck to make the swing.
We just had that happen in February.
Yeah.
We weren't able to get to a home
Yeah.
because we couldn't make the corner.
So I mean, that's the problem, it's not the side streets that's the problem, Willow Street's the problem.
Willow Street is the primary problem.
Right.
Right.
And I made multiple site visits just to make sure I was getting accurate data and
So-
being told accurate stories, and
I mean,
it's true.
it's
Right.
unfair for the three houses that are at
You
that
bring that
intersection
this
that they
way.
can't park
No,
there,
the other
but
way, sorry.
it's gonna have
Right
to
there,
be
thank
just
you.
for the intersection, because,
So you can see the driveways.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's
we
two
talk
of them
to
that
any
have no
residents
garages
there?
in the back.
We
Yeah,
talked
there's
to any
more than
residents
two.
there?
They have a driveway, right?
What was that?
Did we talk to any residents there?
The residents are the reason we did the study, because a few of them have requested it.
Yeah.
And then the complaints from the post office because of the restriction.
Yeah.
What we're seeing is, I don't know if the people that are parking improperly are actually residents, or if they're visitors, or what's going on.
And some people leave their cars there and just leave, you know, if they,
I mean, we're getting complaints that there's cars parked on this stretch, and there's no home that has access on this stretch of
Okay.
Willow.
Mhm.
They have a driveway, and they have a driveway. They have the driveway coming off the side in here. They have a driveway in the rear, and they
And
have a
in front.
driveway.
But even in that picture, you can see where they're parked on both sides,
Yeah.
it's impossible to get through there.
Correct.
So you gotta at least restrict one side. The problem about restricting the sidewalk side is like you said, all the mailboxes are there. So, yeah, it's great if you can't park there, they'll have access to the mail, but you're talking minimum 3 cars per house normally, and that's their entire parking.
I mean, my recommendation would be, during the daytime, when these are typically taken, you're not really seeing a lot of parking.
Yeah, I'm
I
talking,
would leave the south alone, and if they wanna move their mailboxes to the north, just have them all
is
relocate.
that allowable though? Does the post office allow you to move your mailbox?
Yeah, as long as it's in the right of way and they're all consistently on the same spot.
That's what I'm saying, some are gonna move and some are not.
Yeah, that would be problematic,
So
though.
if they don't all do it, the post office isn't gonna
Right.
deliver. They're
Right.
very finicky.
yeah, they are.
If they would just allow them to walk that park. right?
I'm on a state road
They
and
would be
there's days
fine.
I don't even get mail. it says I get mail, I get the email that says I'm getting the mail, I never get the mail.
Check with
But
your
again,
bank, remind them.
knowing that Willow Street is I'll say a high-need area, that's why we said if you do decide to take the optional, I would absolutely not make it an all complete prohibition. It would be a time of day type of prohibition, because you would wanna give the people
And
places to park when they get home from work.
You said that the post office claims that they deliver between
3 and 3:30.
3 and 3:30?
And that changes from when, we were down there, Mark, and talked, when we went down there,
I would say later.
the residents told us basically that they change at different times. They tell them a certain time, and then they don't come that time,
Yeah.
and then they'll make it early when the cars are there.
I think they were claiming they were getting tired of in Briarwood before they
Yep.
came over there, if I remember correctly.
Correct. So,
Yeah, there's no guarantee of a time.
Well, that's why I went with the broad range of 10 to 4. If we do
I
it.
think the problem is their time has become later, and they're now in the evening hours when people are home after
Right.
4.
Correct.
My mail comes at 7 o'clock at night half the time.
We've had various
Yeah,
times
many
here,
times.
but no, I think, I wouldn't so much worry about the south side and that daytime unless we absolutely have to do that. We're still gonna allow parking. I just, at the least, they already can't park in these alleyways anyway, cause they're too narrow,
Right.
and we have those issues.
But if we're gonna do an ordinance, include the alleys anyway.
Well, that's why,
Correct.
that's why we,
And-
even at
and
Arrowhead
We're not
Road.
seeing,
Mark.
Now, the other devil advocate question I have is, who? The state police are not going to, and there is no such thing as a state police parking ticket. So
The
they're
township-
not going to enforce anything in this village.
currently has parking ordinances on the books. The zoning officer and myself would have the authority to enforce them if the need would be.
So that's what you're looking at, third party and manager.
We don't own any land around there then, do we, as far
We
as
have
the
the
township?
park, and we've
Because I
never
know Northampton
restricted people
Borough, they
from
have a parking
parking.
lot that a lot of people use.
So we've
and
never
it's free
restricted,
parking there,
the
that they
park.
can move their vehicles and park there, and it's not too far away from a lot of the houses.
so you can see, I mean, this home has a driveway, this home has a driveway, I think this is a double.
But we don't have anything down on the
They're
side where the
parking.
houses are.
None of these
Parking lot
people
is
are
on
gonna
that
walk
lot.
3 blocks to park their car.
Well, no, but
No, but
they
if
all
we
have.
had some kind of land at the end there, I didn't know if we owned
don't.
any of that
No,
land.
we don't.
Yeah, I mean, most of these have access to the rear. There might be some where the garage might be too small, but you're still gonna have
Oh,
at
yeah.
least a space and a half in front of each home.
But I think
Or
we
we
should
gotta use
restrict
from
where the
somebody.
intersections come out, because unfortunately, the emergency vehicles can't make that turn. So, I mean, there's gonna be 2 or
Is
3
that one
houses
on
that are jilted,
Jacksonville,
but
you mean?
where Birch comes out and where Elm comes out, there's no way, if they're parked on that curb, that we can make that turn.
Yeah, in fact, one of the things that I would say is, depending on the direction the board goes, we may want to delineate and help some people understand where they're not parking by making the curb yellow.
Yes, I agree.
Hmm.
Now, Elm Street won't be so much of a problem restricting parking, because that's one big lot with one house.
Yeah, but they,
For the
you know what,
intersections.
Mark, there were 3 cars parked right at the intersection.
No, I
where was
believe
out
that, I'm
there.
just looking at hardship.
At the intersection of
Yeah.
Jacksonville Road,
Yeah,
they never move.
well, that I don't know, but
Yeah.
Well,
they
I'm
never
saying
move.
Elm Street and Willow.
I
Oh, you
seen
mean
2
right
cars
there by
in
that
this
big
area.
house with the pillars?
Correct, it's the same car sitting there.
I think she travels throughout the state, doesn't she, driving that
I don't think it's a she.
wide
That's
load?
a she.
Isn't it a wide load?
I'm
person?
going almost a year. Cars there,
I certainly
Cars
hope you're
there.
talking about an escort.
Cars there.
I guess, wide load for trucks.
Okay.
cars there.
Pretty
I
funny.
was like,
Cars
what?
there.
It's going like 6, 10 years, the car's still
Yeah.
there.
I don't think, I honestly, I don't even know if the one car's registered.
That's enforceable by the township too, or it should be.
Well, if we can tell when the registration,
To go down Union
We're
You're
Boulevard.
supposed to have an ORI and be
That's
able to
one of my
run
aunts
stuff.
tells everybody.
They don't have the
Nobody's
stickers anymore.
registered.
Yeah, but you run the plate. The township, the municipality is supposed to have an Orion designation that they can run things.
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah, we have to work on that.
So it can be run by the
Okay.
township and found out. And then that's how you found out whether it's registered. And inspection's easier to find, you just walk up to the car.
Yeah, that one's easy.
It's on a public street.
Yeah, that one's easy.
The
And then they can be
Allentown
towed
Parking
then,
Authority,
right?
well, the Allentown
So-
Parking Authority loves that.
Oh my
because they-
God, yeah. They don't want to sidewalks.
If we pick a time for the street for delivery, I think we need to speak to the post office, postmaster down there,
Mhm.
and find out what time they're gonna do it. So we can't restrict, if we're gonna restrict it, it's gotta benefit,
The post office,
correct, so they get their mail.
right.
The other
So,
option
I-
is
that's an-
potentially, can they do a cluster
They
box
change
in the village somewhere
So I just
That-
mentioned the gym.
that goes out and allows
Is
them
there
that?
any land that we can either, they're subject to an easement, or any land on the township property that could be used as a cluster? But then you need, the problem with that, Brandon, is you gotta be careful, because you need pull-off areas
Correct.
for people
Yeah,
to come
yeah,
pull
you're
up.
gonna have to have a full lane for pull-off, and there is no room
People
for
bitch
that.
about having to walk to
Yep.
get it, but that is, because all new developments now, they require you to do the cluster
Correct.
boxes.
Well, I brought that up before.
Realistically, and I looked at that, the best place that you would be able to do that and potentially get an easement or something from one of the property owners would be at the intersection of Elm and Willow.
That'd be good.
So,
Elm and Willow.
for the sake of timing, let's digest it a little bit, think about it, and then we'll put it on the next agenda. And we can kind of finalize the language, and then we can even show on a map clearly where we're looking at.
Be reminded that it's,
Would you say
zoning
yes?
officer.
Correct.
So you already know that answer. Well, if it's gonna help, most of the bitches weren't parking, it was the mail.
And since
Yeah,
we
but
mentioned
the
the post
mail
office, there was
was
an
predicated
email
on
about
parking.
some other development
Yeah, but
about,
It's the Sunny Slope development,
Yeah.
okay,
which I
I wanted to
talk
send
about
it, did
that
you
before.
get it?
so we are gonna,
I did not, but Lou forwarded it.
we are gonna
Yes.
talk
Okay,
about
good,
it.
I tried to forward it to you, but it
Okay.
wasn't working.
Well, if we're gonna have a meeting with the
And
post
you know what,
office.
oh, forget it.
Well, it's
Can
a
we-
different
no-
post office.
No,
two
no,
different
with
post
reference to
offices.
Jacksonville, can we see if they're willing to do a walking instead of, that might alleviate some of the issue right there.
I think they used to have a walking route, and they've eliminated it because they've downsized and shifted routes around
Right.
to the point where, and rural carriers only have so much time to make a stop.
Correct.
So walking takes a little bit more than driving, and the
I don't
easy
see
way
them doing it.
right now, under their policy is, if we can't deliver it, we have to stop the first time. After that, we can't deliver, we don't have to stop anymore.
Right.
You have to come pick it up, and that's been their default.
And the problem is, most of the carriers for rural are actually not employees, they're independents, so they're not gonna go on walking.
It's a discussion to have with them on what they would consider, but I will say, the or federal representative's office has reached out, and they have zero pull with the post office on this issue. So if they can't solve it, I don't know what we're gonna do locally. But I think it's sporadic at times. I mean, we've had people complain about kids playing in the street, we've had people complain about speeding, we've had people complain about parking. We're not gonna solve all the issues, but we at least have to make sure the road's accessible in a snow emergency. We do the best that we can for emergency vehicles to get in, and then also deal with, if we can, the postal issue.
They did ask for this.
Yeah,
Just remember, there's 20 homes just on Willow Street.
correct.
They would give two people a car on 20 homes, that's already 40 cars right there.
I would say at least 60, but
And if they
yeah.
have a kid,
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't think there's that many that have, I mean, there are, but not,
that many.
you're seeing a shift of the older population there that has either died, moved
Oh,
out, went into a home, and you have some younger families in now. So there are a lot more kids in Jacksonville than what there was
People are
before.
moving back to the parents too,
Eh,
and they don't wanna walk another block or two either.
yeah,
Well,
When the greenhouse was gonna
Yeah.
come up with the light.
yeah, so we gotta keep looking at this.
so this will be tabled until the next meeting.
So if you get a chance to drive down there and look at it yourself, that would be the best way to see what the issue is.
All right, moving on to the continuation of discussion on the inspection program. So previously, we talked about rental programs, we talked about commercial, kind of went all over the place, we were looking at checklists. And talking to Ray, I think we need to do something. My opinion is, I think we need to focus on commercial inspection, the non-residential aspect. We've had a bunch of calls over the years from Thermo Fisher, we've had them at Trader Joe's. We just had an incident with a pole station that was not properly or destroyed, and they had to trigger an alarm. I think there needs to be some teeth in that. We already have an ordinance that is on the books that allows them to do some things. What I would like to do is actually repeal that and adopt the International Fire Code, which we talked about previously, there's just some sections I don't think are applicable to us that we may have to omit out when we adopt it. But that process goes through, we actually, Ray and I met with several municipalities, the city of Bethlehem, on how to adopt it, because it's an amendment to the existing building code that goes stricter than the current code, which we're allowed to do, but we have to get state approval from labor and industry before we can do that. So my recommendation is to do that and incorporate the multifamily housing that deals with our boarding houses that we have, or those that have 3 or more families in them, and then if we feel that there's an issue continuing with rental properties, we come at it and deal with it there. I mean, one of the things we do have is the property maintenance code. So if somebody has an issue with the rental property, we can target the property maintenance code for certain things for the fire aspect of it. It's just gonna be a little bit more delicate, because obviously the tenants that are there, we're gonna be dealing with at that same time. So, go ahead.
How often do you go to a warehouse? Like if the warehouse is built and they have the compliance, you go back to check it again?
Well, we don't
See
go in.
what they're storing?
Well, there would be.
We can't go out and check it, but this would allow us to do that in a way that we're, so
With
there's,
the warehouses too then?
so the
again
building
after
gets
fact?
certified to be constructed. But
Mhm.
usually after that certification and there's an occupancy permit that they can legally occupy it, there's
Mhm.
nothing that happens after that. And the one case that we were talking about, they actually went inside and modified it in another community, and there was no permits, there's no nothing,
Mhm.
and that dampened the response. So what this program would allow them to do is effectively pre-plan their facilities, which the fire department currently does an excellent job. They used to use First Look Pro, they now have, or First Do, but they've gone through some of these programs now, and they have a really good job, and they're starting to expand, looking at the Knox Box program again. So we already have the tools, so we can do a prevention inspection, but then we can also check to see what's going on in structure, have they altered anything. Some communities do recertifications, where every so many years there's a random audit. We rely on the state to come in on a certain basis and say, hey, we want to go in and do an inspection. You need to go and give us access to these 3 properties because you've issued permits, and we're going to check them for ADA. They're not really checking for anything else. They're just making sure that the state is not potentially liable because the municipality issued a permit and didn't follow the Americans with Disabilities Act. So my recommendation is looking at some program that you can do an inspection. It allows them to pre-plan, it allows them to identify, but then we have enforcement if there's issues on the property that we can remedy and work on going through and dealing with. And I think you have enough of the non-residential commercial aspect in the township that it's gonna cover the cost of the program. And then, once that's established, you can look at the residential side, if there's issues going on, or you're seeing more rentals increase, or the demand, for landlords aren't taking care of things. We can easily then say, okay, we already have an inspection in force, let's go out and do the next step. And I have talked with Barry Isaac, they do have staff that can do some of those inspections. It's just, I don't think it's cost effective on just a rental side of it,
Mhm.
because it's just gonna be too laborious, and their
That could be
rates are
very
high.
expensive too.
Correct. But I think we've already previously identified, years ago we discussed it, COVID came around, it kind of fell by the wayside, we had change of staff, and here we are today still discussing it. So I think that's the direction I would recommend that we go, just because I think it's overall gonna be good for the community. It's actually gonna allow us on our, fire rating that the score that we have, our ISO rating, that will give us actually bonus points when they do the rating, that we have a strong fire prevention program the next time around.
And the places that had the fires that had rentals, do we go back there every so often? Check that everything's in compliance now, or
So the
after
one-
it's done, it's gone?
So one of the fires that we did have, they came in for permits, I believe they have an occupancy permit, they're back, they stayed in the house, they kind of had to do some things to change it around, but they have permits for everything. The other one was supposed to demolish it, never did. We've been going back and forth with him, and I'm not sure where we're at. I believe we're gonna be getting to an enforcement stage if you have to remove the building. It was posted previously as an unsafe structure under the property maintenance code, but it never really went anywhere after that. Plus, we did have a change of staff when that was issued. The current zoning officer and code enforcement official was not the one that issued that permit. So there's some institutional knowledge that was lost.
Is that the one
But-
that they were sleeping somewhere in between the floors or something? Was that one ever completed and checked on?
I think that was the one that they had multiple floors, that it was just
Right.
basically storage. I mean, I think there's zoning issues there, just because I don't think it's actually a single-family property. It used to be an auto parts store, they had a permission to do an apartment, and then it slowly went beyond that. I mean, I don't know how many actual units were in there, and unfortunately, since it burned, we really can't tell. I just know he was instructing us that he was going to tear it down because he had no insurance to cover
Yeah,
the
but I don't
cost of
think it
it.
ever was.
Correct. So now it's just a matter of getting back out with code
And who
enforcement
does
and
that,
doing
you
it.
guys or the fire department?
Well, the fire department was involved when we posted as an unsafe structure, but Maggie, our zoning officer, would be involved in sending out the notice. Now, we did send him a notice when he did the permit. It wasn't technically issued, that he needed to complete the paperwork. I don't think he ever returned it.
I did a lot of cars parked there, so I was just wondering.
But yeah, no, and there's other buildings that he owns that, but I think the fire prevention code would apply to that type of building if they're using it for storage of auto parts. So it's almost like it's a commercial enterprise more than a hobby.
I seriously think this is the direction we should be taking with this ordinance.
And I think we also have people that can assist with it, and it's the skill level. But I think for the community standpoint, that's where we need the next steps. That if I was gonna go somewhere and,
So what do we need to do next to continue this?
so I think we would make a motion to have the staff go out and look at adopting the international property, or international fire code, authorize the manager and the solicitor, and then we would look at repealing the existing code and replacing it with the sections, and we can put that on the next agenda. I did have a copy at one point of the fire code. It's since a newer version. We'll have to go through and make sure we have that.
And that's for commercial and,
It would be any non-residential, commercial, industrial use, and then limited to the multifamily buildings would be incorporated into that.
so did you get that all, young lady?
I think I got those.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second.
A second.
Any questions? Roll call.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Cruz?
Yes.
Ms. Hensinger?
Yes.
Mr. Schwartz?
Yes, motion passed.
She has
Anything
to
else
take
with it?
shorthand.
No, I said for your report.
You
That
do
was
have one
me, I
more.
said that.
No, as talking with Brent, we agree wholeheartedly with it, we support it 100%. I think, obviously, this would be going down the line, the only caveat I would like to see is that it's not a third-party agency, it's actually an employee of East Allen Township, that, and we can always discuss that, I mean, there's significant reasons why to interact with not only the township, but also the fire department with pre-planning and possible assist with response during daytime hours when there's, nobody up here, so. But that's my 2 cents.
48 seconds, pretty good.
It's a record.
Don't jinx us. All right, so the next item we have is continuing on fire department. Previously, we got a grant for $186,000, I believe it was, for a rapid response vehicle. We are coming near the expiration of it, and we have $62,500 left. Ray has been working on estimates on equipment for it and some final aspects to get it running. You can see the truck, it's out back, but it doesn't have a lot of equipment on it yet. So what I'm asking for is permission to go out and spend the $62,500 with the fire department coordinating. Everything would be on co-stars, or meet the specs. It would be under the dollar threshold, just so that we can close out the grant, because we may not have a workshop meeting. The grant terminates, I believe, June 1st, so I would like to do it prior to that.
Are we gonna have that meeting?
We will have a meeting for that separately, so we will have that.
That doesn't depend on
But
us.
this grant still has to be spent out,
Right,
I mean, it's.
or potentially we would lose the 60.
and this is grant money, not township budget, so
Correct.
I'm looking for a motion to authorize the purchase of various rapid response equipment for the vehicle in the amount of $62,500.
So moved.
Can I have a motion
Second.
Second.
and a second? Any
Second.
questions?
And I will come in before you roll call and give you a report of everything that was
So that's
bought.
only for the rapid,
Correct, it's nothing
Okay,
else.
nothing else.
Yeah, it's nothing
Just
else
to spend the
outside of that.
grant money.
And this is money out of the grant, it's not money from the sale of the trucks or anything like that.
okay.
So it's not what we discussed previously, or looking at the gear. We will have that conversation and go through everything, but this is not related to that.
Okay.
Roll call.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Cruz?
Yes.
Ms. Hensinger?
Yes.
Mr. Schwartz?
Yes, motion passed.
I do have a staff report.
Okay.
So,
Manager,
we have a electronics recycling event coming up on 24th? Is that it?
I think so.
I didn't set it up, but it's a daytime, it's for residents, we will accept items from outside residents, but they would have to pay the full charge.
What is it that you have?
It's an electronic waste recycling event. So we did budget last year and this year, in this budget, for an event. We'll see where the costs come in, but we're not gonna charge the residents for the first event. I believe we are gonna limit it
April
to
29th.
April 29th. That is
So what
a,
is this? What was
It's
all
a
allowed?
Wednesday.
anything that has a cord.
Electronics and
I'm sorry?
anything that has a cord, it's a Wednesday.
It's a Wednesday. And once
Anything
the
with a
truck is
cord?
filled, we're done.
recycle. You said the 29th.
The 29th.
Yes, it's Wednesday,
from
29th.
What time?
11 to 1 PM.
Where?
Bicentennial Park.
Bicentennial Park.
Is that gonna be posted on the website?
It's
It
been.
is.
It's been, we have flyers, it's on the sign. We'll
And
send
it's
out
on
an email
I didn't
blast.
really look, and I didn't even
Old
see that.
cathode ray tube
I don't
monitors.
see anything anywhere.
Probably.
Well,
Anything with a cord, you said?
Yeah, I don't like probably.
TVs,
husband don't have a
monitors,
cord,
desktop
forget it.
computers, printers.
I can't imagine it's not, as long as it's not
Yeah.
damaged.
Put it on.
Send me a picture of it and I'll check.
Install one.
Dehumidifiers,
Yes.
No hole.
Yes,
refrigerators.
yes.
Yes.
Washers, dryers, stoves, mini fridges, air conditioners,
Good.
refrigerators, freezers, copiers.
Dehumidifiers?
Yes, he said.
That's
Well,
good.
I should have told me, I just took ours down to the dump, or wash my down
Dump it, dump it.
So
dump
sad.
it, dump it.
down there, Airport Road. Where's it
You
called?
gotta
Dump? I don't know
follow
what it's
our
called, the
Facebook
recycling
page.
center.
It's been on our Facebook page.
29th.
April 29th. And then there's another one for the
Oh, I didn't
fall
come to,
that we're
I
gonna
didn't
do.
see
We
their
did two at
Facebook.
once.
Oh.
Only the
So the
29th
fall
is
will
free
be
for the
September
residents.
23rd.
Yes.
Well, the one
Okay,
at the
but-
end of the year, we may, just depends on where we're at in the budget.
And what's the other date?
September 23rd.
September 23rd, okay.
And that one's 11 to 1 as well. And then we have an Earth Day event coming up in 2 weeks on Wednesday, the 23rd. And that following weekend for Earth Day, we're gonna plant plugs at the Bicentennial Park Habitat Study for, or area, for anybody that's interested in planting.
I think
And
I'll
I-
be in New York.
And I think these will be easier if you kill things, you won't kill these plants that get planted.
Hmm.
They're pretty hardy, so.
Mm,
And that's April 22nd and 25th.
all right.
Okay.
Bring your gloves. We'll bring the water.
And that could be
That's all I
fun.
have. And I wanna thank Angela for setting those two programs
Thank
up.
you, Angela.
All right, that's manager and secretary. We have a treasurer bank account summary and a March bills summary. Anything from the tax collector?
No, I think people have been coming in pretty steadily. So far, we haven't had any issues with everything being on one bill now. There was one or two people that wanted to
Early
pay
due
their
date
hydrant.
is April 30th
I believe that's the deadline
for the discount,
for the discount, correct?
so it's public.
Yep.
Okay. Solicitor,
Yes, sir.
any report?
No report.
Anything needed to be discussed?
Nothing.
Engineer?
Hopefully everyone had a chance to take a look at it. I have two updates since the engineering report was issued. Snowdrift Road has indicated, or Snowdrift Storage Contractor has indicated that they're going to be paving and working on Snowdrift Road next week and the following week, so just so you have knowledge of that. There may be lane closures and things going on at that time. And then the other update is we did receive the contract documents from Lower Nazareth
Mhm.
in regard to the Township Line Road construction project. We haven't had a chance to look at everything yet. Based upon some very quick comments from both township managers, we're going to update the plans in regard to signage and some other things.
Yeah, but they're very minor.
Yeah.
That.
Okay. Do you have any updates on Allegheny, that sinkhole? Is that, where is that
Next,
sink?
I think it's the 22nd, they're scheduled to go out, 21st or 22nd.
To evaluate it?
No, to do the actual repairs. The contractor's been pushed back and pushed back and pushed back.
Somebody's taking those, on the weekends, they're taking those barriers away, putting them on the side.
If they
Just
fall
so
in
you
a,
know.
yeah, if they fall in a sinkhole, they damaged it themselves. I mean, it is a state fine, I believe it's a $500 fine for going through road closed now.
Mhm.
So, I mean, we do have the potential. We could open it, we just don't want to because of the severe dip in the road until the
Yeah,
city
I
repairs
don't blame
it.
you, and there's all those stones in there and stuff.
Correct,
So April 21st, 22nd,
It's,
there's
no,
a
April
drop.
20th.
20th,
What is it?
20th,
It's a Monday, April 20th. is when
So
they're
is
coming out.
Bethlehem gonna fix it then?
yes, yeah.
Fill the hole?
They are responsible for everything that
Good.
is sinkhole wise around the curbs, the road itself. They will be doing a temporary blacktop, it's not cold patch, it's gonna be the base material because we said we were coming into, or binder, because we have plans, once they're done replacing their water main in the next year or two, we will be going out and paving. So we're working with them on not making them do a full final restoration, because we're
Do we
coming
have
in.
that in writing?
Eh,
They've been saying that for like 20 years
I think
now.
at this point, they can't keep affording the repairs that they just had.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, there's a break in that road every 100 feet,
Mhm.
so there's not much pipe left.
Oh, they'll be happy. I don't walk anywhere near that any place, because everybody wants to know what's gonna get fixed.
Is there anything that
That's
needs
when
to
you
be?
tell them it's not on your side of the street, Georgiana, you're not worried about it.
Hmm?
You tell them it's not on your side of the street, you're not worried.
No, but they already tell me mine got done 3 years
You each
ago.
have 1 minute.
The one yellow highlighted
Yeah,
item
you're gonna
says
get
that something needs to be done by April 11th. Board of Supervisors approved an extension until April 11th. Vince Mortison lot line adjustment, anything need to be done with
That's their
that?
recording of their final plan conditions, we've been lax with it.
Because it's the 9th now.
Yeah, basically, Mark, it's something that the board hasn't really, I'll say, taken a stand on as a policy. It's a general condition that's always included with our conditions of approval to record within a year. It's up to the board whether you want us to actually officially
Was there
pursue.
anything that needs to be done yet that?
He has to do improvements, and he has to decide on what he's actually doing with the lots. He can't sell them, we're not recording them, so
Yeah, he can't do
the
anything
ball
until
is in
that
his
plan is
court.
recorded.
Okay. so it's
once
nothing-
he hits year
nothing that
5,
They're gonna come back at us and say we didn't do something.
correct, now,
Okay,
if he
so
gets
I
to
can-
year 5 of after that conditional, I mean, he's gonna have to comply with whatever new regulations we have,
Okay.
and he may have to redo his plans, so you guys have that luxury.
I was just looking at all the yellow highlighted stuff. Alright.
Yeah, if it was, I'll say, a specific NBC deadline or something like that, Mark, I would've put red on that.
Okay, good. Alright, Public Works, there's a report in there. Any questions on that?
No, the truck's been ordered, they've been busy getting around, cleaning up the township, getting all the spots that we've hit with the plow, so they're down at the park, working, cutting grass already, so things are moving along.
Alright, so that's Public Works. Planning, there's a minutes posting.
Yeah, they have a couple projects that they had site plan reviews, that the waivers that you guys granted for site plan have come in. Otherwise, it's a little slow for them. They're still working on the zoning updates.
Recreation, there's a report.
They did not have a meeting this past month. I think they had one the month before. The Jacksonville Park plans are out for bid right now, so we will be awarding those at the May meeting if they come in favorably. So,
Summer camp registration is now being taken. It's gonna start June 27th. Okay. Zoning, we have the permit list, the report.
they keep applying.
Fricka has a financials listed.
We had a meeting last month, but, didn't really talk about much, and the meeting for April is canceled because of PSAT, but we'll meet the following month.
Nothing listed for ambulance. Fire department, there's a report. 342 man hours,
For what?
39 incidents.
242 man hours for us?
No, that was, yeah, the training hours that they've
342
had.
man hours included 150 hours of training, 125 dedicated to incidents, 43 for other activities. They had a total of 39 incidents.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
None of them were in East Allen, were they? That
No.
fire.
The breakdown's on there, I think.
Yeah, I think-
18 to 21, 18 to 24.
Yeah, I think it's
I
45 to
think they put in the paper
53.
now on Home News or the Northampton Press, it says how many fires they have in the areas and how many they responded to, and each station that shows up and
Well, they-
in the paper, I read it
Total
the
for the
time.
year is 126, and 69 of those are in the township.
59 fires?
Incidents.
Well, incidents.
Oh, incidents, like accidents.
Every time they get toned out, it's an
You
incident.
wouldn't have
So-
a township left. if
So
it
in
was
March,
65.
they had 18 calls that were in East Allen, 21 were mutual aid.
Thinking, what do they do with cats at the tree?
Any other questions from fire?
I don't have questions unless you do.
Okay. I just wanted to give you the time.
Just for
you
record,
needed
Jim
it.
spoke more than I just listened.
Okay.
I was gonna say, you get a gold star today.
Open space and preservation.
We're setting up a,
We have to do a meeting in May. I
Meeting in
believe there's
May?
still some changes that have to be made based on comments from Northampton County. I believe Jim was going through it as well and had some comments. So we have to get those reincorporated before we can actually present it to the committee. The county's comments are related to the structure of the township and how we operate, to make sure that this serves as a guide document to whoever the first people that sit on the open space board, so that they understand the roles and how they interact. So they wanted more terminology of how the staff currently would interact with this plan as that first adopted plan.
So their questions were answered.
We're still working on it with Jason. I have to
Okay.
email him. But yeah, we're close.
River Central Regional Planning.
There's been no meetings, and the zoning update is going through. I am working on revision of draft number 2 of the final to get out to our group. I got through page 56 of 2 from our planner, and I did not get to the engineer's comments yet to get into that list, so we are making headway.
it is a lot larger than what I think everyone's gonna expect.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're at 450 pages right now of an ordinance.
All right. Historical Society.
There's a report.
I see the report.
Did I miss that this month? When is the 15th?
I think it's the 23rd.
That's
the third
Board of
Wednesday.
Supervisors. Anybody have
Don't confuse
anything?
me anymore. I'm in the same situation as like this couple weeks.
That only question I had was that email from the post office or the
Yeah, so-
congressional representative that's asking us to do something.
We did receive it. We've already been talking with, I think, the constituent that they received the correspondence from. Because the plan dates back to the 2012, 2014 era, and there was no approvals that the developer got from the post office, the constituent and the federal representative's office is asking for a copy of the first submission to see if they can ask the post office to reconsider having cluster boxes installed. So it was always assumed that they were gonna have individual mailboxes, even though they didn't have approvals. Not really a township issue. I think the more problematic thing is, the post office wasn't delivering because there was no addresses assigned that they received. We then issued the addresses, they delivered for a period of, I think, 4 or 5 months, and then they stopped delivering the mail. And they did a hard stop of saying, you now have to pick it up in the Bethlehem Post Office, which is down off of, I think, Broad Street.
It's ridiculous.
So they've pretty much cut them off completely.
What's the one by the park?
Post
Yes.
office issue again.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they pretty much said after today's delivery, we're not delivering anymore. So the developer was working on cluster boxes. The roads are designed to have parking on one side that they could at least pull off. They don't need to do anything elaborate. We told them they could potentially have it in the right of way, or if they could put it on a common area that they have, there would be consideration for that. We haven't heard anything, but I believe a constituent's asking for us to go out and look at this and submit the plan to see if they can convince the post office
Like,
to.
eventually, there are gonna be sidewalks there. They're saying there's no sidewalks.
Well, there's no
on the main-
sidewalks internal to the development.
But not on the
The
outside.
outside collector roads, there's a deferral potential waiver that they've been working on a design for. They've not finalized anything. But that still wouldn't be sufficient for the post office, because they would never walk. Those are 1 to 2 acre size lots.
Yeah, they're not gonna walk that.
They won't walk down in Jackson.
Yeah.
They don't wanna
Yeah.
get out of the truck,
No, they don't.
because then you'll see them there in their
They don't even-
pajamas and their
They
slippers.
don't even
there.
stop at my house.
You know what I mean?
So, yeah.
Yeah, at this
I know.
point, so we're gonna pull the plans and see what we can get
Not
to
like the
them.
old
and-
So we're
Yeah,
working
man.
on something with that.
Yeah, we were forwarded, I don't know why it was forwarded just to the supervisors at first. The last time with Jacksonville, it was forwarded to us. I just don't know if it was a contact issue or what happened.
Yeah, I'm surprised to see it.
All right. Then we have, correspondence,
Just 2 thank you letters.
thank you letters. handwritten one to the,
Mm-hmm.
we still made it digital. I love it. I love it. Alright. Alright, any public comment on anything? Alright, looking for a motion
It's
for
your time,
adjournment.
Georgianne.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Being adjourned.
You gotta go home and calm your beast.
Alright.
I'm the same way, my husband is like,
Why would we have